Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready to dive into something kind of deep? We're tackling Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now today.
Oh, a classic. It's more than just self-help, you know? It really makes you think differently about your own mind.
It's one of those books that's been on my list forever. Everyone keeps saying it's life-changing.
It can be, yeah. But
Okay.
you got to be ready to actually put in the work, you know? It's not a quick fix kind of thing.
No shortcuts, huh? All right, well, challenge accepted. So, where do we even begin with a book like this?
Well, Tully starts off strong right out the gate. He tells this parable, about a beggar sitting on a box of gold. But the beggar, he's so caught up in begging that he doesn't even realize the wealth he's got literally under him.
Ouch. That's got to be one of the worst feelings, being that oblivious.
Right. And Tully's point is that many of us, we're kind of like that beggar. We're searching for happiness and fulfillment outside of ourselves when it's been inside us all along.
It's like we've lost the keys to our own treasure chest.
Exactly. And the first step to finding those keys, according to Tully, is recognizing that we are not our minds.
Okay, now we're getting into the good stuff. What does that even mean, though, not being our minds?
So Tully makes a distinction between thinking and being. You know how our minds are constantly chattering away, judging, worrying, planning.
Tell me about it. Mine never seems to shut off.
Right. And we often get so lost in that mental noise that we lose touch with a deeper, more peaceful state of simply being. Like right now, we can be aware of all these sounds around us, the feeling of our bodies in these chairs without getting swept away by them.
Yeah, I get that. It's about being present, not lost in our heads.
Exactly. And Tolle is saying that much of our suffering comes from this mistaken identification with our thoughts. We think that we are our thoughts when really they're just like passing clouds in the sky of our awareness.
Okay, I like that analogy. So how do we stop clinging to those clouds, those thoughts? How do we actually start to experience this being state?
Well, that's where the title of the book comes in. The Power of Now. Tully says the present moment, this now, is the only reality.
But what about the past and the future? Aren't those real too?
Sure, in a way, but Tully's point is that we spend so much time reliving past regrets or worrying about what might happen in the future that we miss out on the aliveness of this moment right now.
It's like that saying, right? Worrying is like paying interest on a debt you may not even owe.
Exactly. He's not saying to completely ignore the past or future, but he encourages us to notice when our minds are dragging us away from the now and gently guide our attention back to the present moment.
Easier said than done, right? Our minds are like two-year-olds, constantly demanding attention.
Oh, absolutely. But like training a 2-year-old, with practice, we can learn to become more aware of those mental patterns and make a conscious choice to come back to the present moment.
So how do we do that? How do we actually train our minds to be more present?
Tolle offers a bunch of practical techniques, from focusing on our breath to really paying attention to our senses to noticing the sensations in our bodies, anything that helps ground us in the here and now.
It's like hitting the reset button on our brains,
Right.
bringing our attention back to what's actually happening instead of getting lost in that mental chatter.
Exactly. And it's not always easy. Our minds are going to wander. But the key is to not judge ourselves when that happens. Just gently guide your attention back to the present moment.
No judgment, got it. But I gotta ask, why is being present so important? Like, what's the big deal about this now moment anyway?
Well, Tolle argues that when we're truly present, something really interesting happens. We start to notice that a lot of our suffering is self-created.
Self-created, you mean like we're doing it to ourselves?
In a way, yeah. See, most of our suffering comes from our attachment to past hurts and our anxieties about the future. It's like we're carrying around all this baggage from the past and worrying about stuff that hasn't even happened yet.
It's like we're living in a mental time warp, constantly bouncing between the past and the future. No wonder we're exhausted.
Right. But Tolle is saying that the only place where those thoughts have any real power over us is in this present moment. And in this moment, we have a choice.
A choice to suffer or
To choose presence. To
Yeah.
simply observe those thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by them.
Okay, but how do we actually do that? Like, when you're in the middle of a really intense emotion, it's not like you can just flip a switch and suddenly feel calm and peaceful.
You're right, it's not a quick fix. It's a practice, something we cultivate over time. But Tolle argues that even becoming aware of those patterns, noticing when we're hooked by a thought or emotion, is a huge step in the right direction.
So it's about awareness first, then what?
Then it's about learning to create some space between ourselves and those thoughts and feelings.
Space, like mental space.
Exactly. And in that space, we find a sense of freedom, We realize that we are not our thoughts, we are not our emotions, we are the awareness that's witnessing those thoughts and emotions.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. It's like we're stepping back from the content of our minds and becoming the observer.
Precisely. And that shift in perspective, that's where the real magic starts to happen.
So by becoming the observer, by creating that space between ourselves and our thoughts, we start to free ourselves from that cycle of suffering.
Exactly. And it's in that space of awareness that we can start to tap into the power of the present moment.
This is already making my brain hurt, and we're just getting started.
And it gets even juicier. But I think
Yeah.
this is a good place to pause for now.
Okay, yeah, let's let this all sink in for a bit. And we've covered a lot of ground already. The parable of the beggar, the difference between thinking and being, the power of the present moment.
It's a lot to digest, but that's the beauty of Tolle's work. It challenges us to question everything we thought we knew about ourselves and the nature of reality.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? We haven't even touched on concepts like the pain body, surrender, or his views on relationships.
Oh, there's so much more to explore, but we'll save that for another time.
So we're back and ready to dive back into the power of now.
I feel like we left off with our brains kind of fried last time, but in a good way, like those really challenging workouts that leave you sore, but also energized.
It's definitely a workout for the mind. And like any good workout, it's important to pace ourselves. We don't want to get overwhelmed.
Right. Small steps. So where do we go from here? We talked about the importance of being present, of recognizing those thought patterns that keep us stuck. But how does that actually translate to living a more peaceful and joyful life?
Well, Tully would say that true joy and peace, they're not things we achieve out there in the world. It's not about getting that promotion or finding the perfect partner. It's about cultivating a sense of inner peace that's independent of our external circumstances.
Okay, but easier said than done, right?
Hmm.
Life throws curveballs. How do we stay grounded when everything around us feels chaotic?
That's where the practice comes in. It's like, remember that analogy of the mind being like a 2-year-old? Well, sometimes that 2-year-old throws a tantrum and we can't always control that. Oh, tell me about it. Mine seems to specialize in public tantrums.
Right. But what we can control is how we respond to those tantrums. Instead of getting caught up in the chaos, we can learn to create some distance, to observe those thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them. It's like instead of being in the middle of the hurricane, we find that calm, still center.
I like that. Finding that eye of the hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually do that? It's not like we could just snap our fingers and suddenly feel calm and peaceful, especially when life's throwing those curveballs.
True. But Tulsa suggests we can train ourselves to become more a thought or emotion. And that awareness, that's where the real power lies.
Okay, I'm with you so far. Awareness is key. But what do we do with that awareness? Like once we notice we're getting sucked into that mental chaos, how do we get out?
Tolle gives us a bunch of practical tools, and one of the most powerful is this idea of connecting with our inner body.
Our inner body. Now we're getting kind of esoteric. What's that all about?
It's not as mystical as it sounds. He's basically saying that we've become so disconnected from our physical selves, always up in our heads, that we've lost touch with this incredible source of wisdom and guidance that's available to us in every moment.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this. It's about tuning in to our senses, noticing the physical sensations in our bodies.
Exactly. Feeling your breath, feeling your feet on the ground, noticing the taste of your food, really being present with your physical experience.
It's like that saying the body keeps the score. Even when we try to ignore our emotions, our bodies are feeling them.
Precisely. And Tolle is saying that by reconnecting with our bodies, we can start to heal that disconnect, that sense of being fragmented and out of balance.
So it's not just about being aware of our thoughts, but also about paying attention to what our bodies are trying to tell us.
Absolutely. He even calls the body our gateway to being. Because when we're fully present in our bodies, we naturally drop out of that mental chatter and into that state of presence, that sense of peace and aliveness that's always available to us.
And that state of presence, that's what helps us navigate those challenging emotions and situations without getting totally swept away.
Exactly. And this is where Tolle introduces this really intriguing concept, the psychic immune system.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Psychic immune system. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Right. But it makes so much sense when you think about it. You know how sometimes you can just feel someone's bad mood like it's contagious?
Oh, totally. It's like their energy just sucks the air out of the room.
Exactly. And Tola is suggesting that by cultivating presence, by strengthening our connection to our inner body, we build up this psychic immune system that helps us stay grounded and centered even when we're surrounded by negativity.
So it's like we're creating a protective bubble around ourselves that prevents us from taking on other people's emotional baggage.
Exactly. It's about holding on to our own inner peace, even in the midst of chaos. And that sense of inner peace, that's what allows us to show up differently in our relationships.
And speaking of relationships, Tolle doesn't shy away from the messy stuff, does he? He dives right into the complexities of love, conflict, and everything in between.
He doesn't sugarcoat it, that's for sure.
Huh.
He's very honest about the fact that relationships can be incredibly challenging, especially when we're coming from that place of ego, that need to be right, to control, to get our needs met.
Which, let's face it, most of us do, at least some of the time. So how do we navigate those tricky relationship dynamics from a more conscious place?
Yeah, relationships. Totally really doesn't hold back when it comes to that.
He keeps it real, that's for sure. And one of the things he talks about that really struck a chord with me is this idea that, until we do our own inner work, until we become more conscious and present, our relationships are always going to be a reflection of our own baggage.
Ooh, that's a tough one to swallow. But also, kind of makes sense. Like, we're all bringing our past hurts and insecurities into our relationships.
Exactly. And then we wonder why things get so messy. But Tully, he flips the script on this whole relationship drama.
Oh, how so? Well, instead of seeing challenging relationships as something to avoid or fix, he actually encourages us to see them as opportunities for spiritual growth.
Whoa, that's a whole different perspective. It's like he's saying, instead of running from the hard stuff, we should lean into it.
Exactly. He even uses the word sadhana, which is a Sanskrit term for spiritual practice.
So he's suggesting we treat our relationships like a spiritual practice.
It's like, instead of getting caught up in who's right or wrong, we can use those moments of conflict as opportunities to practice presence, to observe our own reactions without judgment, and to see our partners as, like, fellow travelers on this crazy journey of life.
It's about choosing compassion over judgment, even when it's hard.
Exactly. And sometimes that means giving up the relationship.
Hold on, now you're going to have to explain that one. Is he saying we should all just become hermits and avoid relationships altogether?
Not at all. When he says giving up the relationship, he's talking about something much deeper.
Yeah, I'm listening.
He's talking about giving up our attachment to the ego's version of the relationship, like that need to be right, to control everything, to get our needs met in a very specific way.
So it's like letting go of that idealized image we have in our heads of how the relationship should be.
Yes. And instead, approaching the relationship and our partner with more acceptance, more openness, and a willingness to just be present with what is.
That sounds terrifying and liberating at the same time.
Right. It's not easy. But it's in that space of surrender, of letting go of our need to control, that true intimacy can blossom.
That makes a lot of sense. When we're constantly trying to change each other to mold the relationship into some perfect ideal, it creates so much tension and resentment.
Exactly. But when we can just accept each other, flaws and all, that's when true love can emerge.
And that acceptance, that's something that Tolle talks about a lot in the context of dealing with our own difficult emotions too, right?
Yeah.
Like with the whole pain body concept.
Absolutely. That's actually a perfect segue. Remember how we talked about the pain body being this accumulation of old emotional pain that we carry around?
Oh yeah, like that invisible backpack full of rocks we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Well, Tolle says that one of the biggest mistakes we make is trying to ignore or suppress our pain body. We try to numb ourselves out with distractions, addictions, whatever we can find to avoid feeling those uncomfortable emotions.
Been there, done that. But it never really works, does it? It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can only keep it down for so long before it comes exploding back up.
Exactly. And Tolle suggests that instead of trying to outrun our pain body, we need to turn towards it with open arms.
Wait, really? Turn towards the pain. That sounds kind of masochistic, doesn't it?
I know, it seems counterintuitive, right?
Idiot.
But his point is that when we try to resist those painful emotions, when we tense up against them, we actually give them more power over us.
So it's like the more we resist, the stronger those emotions become.
Exactly. He compares it to holding on to a burning piece of coal. The tighter you squeeze, the more it hurts.
Okay, that makes sense. But if resisting is the problem, what's the solution? What are we supposed to do with all that pain?
He says we need to meet it with presence.
Presence. You mean like just sit with those uncomfortable feelings and do nothing?
Not exactly do nothing. It's more like creating a space of compassionate awareness around those feelings, noticing them without judgment, without getting swept away by the story that our mind is creating around them.
So it's like we're acknowledging the pain, but we're not letting it define us.
Exactly. And in that space of awareness, something really powerful happens. We start to disidentify from the pain body.
Disidentify. What do you mean by that?
It means we start to see that we are not our pain, that those painful feelings are not who we are, they're just temporary visitors passing through our awareness.
So it's like we're separating ourselves from the pain, creating some distance between ourselves and those difficult emotions.
Exactly. And in that space, we find freedom. Freedom from the grip that our pain body has had on us for so long.
It's like we're reclaiming our power, our sense of agency from those old wounds that have been holding us back.
Precisely. And this disidentification, it doesn't mean the pain just magically disappears.
Right, it's not like suddenly everything's sunshine and rainbows.
Exactly. But the relationship to the pain changes. It no longer has the same power over us. We can observe it, acknowledge it, and let it go without getting totally swept away by it.
So we're learning to coexist with our pain body, rather than letting it control us.
Precisely. And as we practice this, as we get better at catching those old patterns and choosing presence over reactivity, something amazing happens. Tolle says we start to tap into a deeper sense of peace and joy that's not dependent on our external circumstances.
So it's not that life suddenly becomes perfect or easy.
Right, the challenges don't disappear, but our ability to navigate those challenges, to stay grounded and centered in the midst of it all, that's what shifts.
We're building up that resilience muscle, that inner strength that allows us to weather the storms without getting completely knocked down.
Exactly. And that inner strength, that's where our true power lies, not in trying to control the world around us, but in mastering ourselves.
That's a powerful message. It's about shifting our focus from trying to change the external world to cultivating inner transformation.
Precisely. And this is where Tolle's message goes beyond just personal growth and into something much larger. He suggests that as more and more individuals embark on this journey of awakening, as more of us learn to tap into the power of now, it creates a ripple effect that can actually shift the consciousness of the entire planet.
So it's not just about our own individual happiness, but about creating a more peaceful, compassionate, and enlightened world.
Exactly. He believes that by transforming ourselves, we can actually contribute to the transformation of the world around us.
Wow, that's a pretty inspiring thought to end on. It's a powerful reminder that we're not just isolated individuals, but interconnected beings sharing this incredible journey of life together.
And that each of us has a role to play in creating a more beautiful and awakened world.
This has been quite the deep dive. We've covered so much ground today, from the power of the present moment to the complexities of relationships, the pain body, surrender, and even the idea as a psychic immune system.
Tolle really throws a lot at us, but it's the kind of stuff that stays with you long after you finish the book.
It definitely makes you think differently about, well, everything.
It's a call to action, to really examine our lives, our relationships, and our place in the world.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the power of now, we invite you to take a moment to reflect. What resonated most with you today? What insights will you carry with you?
And most importantly, how will you choose to show up in this present moment, in your own life, and in the world around you?
Thanks for joining us on this journey, everyone. Until next time, we encourage you to embrace the power of now.